Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to today's deep woo-woo episode of Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time. With us today, of course, is Mr. Jay Weidner. You can find him at jweidner.com and also here on YouTube at Reality Check. Mr. Weidner, Jay, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. We're covered in ice and snow, but pretty good. And of course, please join me in welcoming Julie from MaisonJupiter.com here on the web and also here on YouTube at Maison Jupiter. Julie, is it the wrong slide deck? What's going on? There you go. That's what was happening. Okay. We're having some technical issues, folks. But first of all, welcome, Julie. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Very good. Hi to the two of you, and hi everybody watching. It's a pleasure to be here, despite this very odd weather crisis here where we are in Canada.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And of course, when you guys see some weird issues like that, please always take the reflex to go to beyondmystic.net/schedule. As you can see here, I did indicate that we have this severe storm, weather notice in effect. We have an ice storm right now. And as you can see, many power lines are down, trees are down on cars, and yeah, up until just a couple of minutes ago, my own internet service provider, the tower, wasn't up and ready. So it appears that we're running now. We're simulcasting on Julie's channel and on mine. We're going to do our very best to do the show, but let me just backtrack to the beginning here. Yes, this is where you can find Jay at jweidner.com and also here on Reality Check on YouTube. And of course, Julie at MaisonJupiter.com. Okay, now that all of that is out of the way, thank you, folks, for joining us here on this live interactive show. We'll try to do our best here. Julie, set the stage for this particular episode here of Nostradamus and the Vortex of Time. There's a lot happening in our realm. We're getting closer and closer to the storming of the Bastille. We saw earlier in France, people were storming the BlackRock Enterprise headquarters. And of course, here in the United States, we have a very distinct figure that was just arraigned the other day, making a complete mockery of our judicial system. Julie, where the hell are we on this timeline, and how does Nostradamus' prophecies maybe help us here navigate all of this crazy stuff?
Well, great question. And I know Nostradamus was famous for his kind of apocalyptic predictions of like the whole world would go crazy, we'd have natural disasters, man-made disasters. But personally, I think I'd like to look at more of the Aquarian archetypal energy that's coming in that also Nostradamus prophesized. So I think we're fully into it because Pluto just entered the sign of Aquarius and we're transitioning into the age of Aquarius, as you guys know. So, and Aquarius is all about rebellion. It's all about revolution, as you just mentioned, the storming of the Bastille that happened at the very last time that Pluto was in Aquarius. So when we look at the past, we can also kind of know what kind of portal of energy will be revisited with, let's say, another chance for us to make different decisions and to choose our future in a different way. And Nostradamus was really big also on that notion of not having a set future, but just kind of mentioning and looking at different timelines in the future to try to avoid the worst ones and choose the better ones. So it's not, as a lot of people are saying, it's not a fate we can't escape. It's more like empowering information to really make conscious decisions. So today we're going to look at two quatrains that I think are very relevant at the moment with all this very Aquarian-like energies of revolution, freedom, wanting to step out of the system, the matrix, which is very Aquarian, also technology, ET discoveries. So we're going to look at two of those that talk about, let's say, some kind of downloads coming in on Earth and allowing us to rediscover hidden knowledge about ETs, but also about our own Earth.
Okay, very good. Let me bring up the first slide. I see we're a little bit choppy here today, but so far the audio at least is coming through okay. So let us know, folks, in the live chat if there's any issues either with the sound or the audio. We'll try to adjust as we keep going. Julie, so the first quatrain is 714. Set this up for the audience here.
Okay, so he says in the first line, they will come to expose the false topography. And I just want to mention here some versions of this quatrain mention he will. Some other versions mention they will, but in the French version, there is no pronouns. So it doesn't really matter. It's that will happen. That's basically what Nostradamus says here. So they will come to expose the false topography. So that's very interesting to me because he kind of leaves that very mysterious. What kind of topography are we talking about here? So are we going to learn about the Earth topography, geography that is false? So are we going to rediscover Earth geography and the lies that have been tied to Earth geography? So maybe our maps are not accurate and we'll update them. So that's kind of a possibility here. But the other one is also exposing space exploration and the planets of our solar system and probably beyond that have been colonized already and that I've been have built on already. So I think there's kind of two concepts here of topography that Nostradamus is kind of hinting into. And then second line, he says, the urns of monuments will be opened. So throughout a lot of quatrains, Nostradamus uses the word urns. I noticed not always as a funeral term, but mostly like an Aquarian archetype, because the Aquarian archetype has the urn as a water bearer. So it's a symbol of knowledge and it's a symbol of Aquarius. So to me, it's more like ancient knowledge will be rediscovered because he does talk about monuments. It talks about the past, is hinting about the past in this quatrain, is this line. So hidden knowledge about sacred sites also kind of came to me about monuments. So I think we're going to rediscover a whole lot of information about who we are, where we came from with those sites, and having a lot of knowledge that is going to be available to us all of a sudden. So maybe because of an event, maybe because there's like an influx of energy that opens up our chakras, who knows? So I can't wait to see what Jay is going to be picking up here. And so another possibility here is a secret document found indicating contact with ETs. So I'm writing a lot of possibilities. And then the other thing that kind of hit me when I was reading that line was the Vatican and its secret library. So and I know the Vatican came in the in our energetic field recently with the eclipse coming up that is going to be at a very interesting portal of energy astrologically with the birth of the Vatican. So maybe the secret library is going to be made public, but because Nostradamus seems to be hinting at some kind of event that will make a lot of knowledge available all of a sudden. So then third line, thus multiplies the philosophy of the sacred or false sect. So here exposing the religions that kept us from knowing who we are and where we come from. Also, the age of Pisces, which was all about faith, dogma, religion, and then we're moving away from that in our kind of knowledge evolution to Aquarius, which is all about true knowledge, true science, and our interconnection to all human beings and also to stars. So I think we're moving away from those blinders that kept us in the religious system with the age of Pisces, opening up to more knowledge. So I think this lines refer to that. And then last line, black for white and the new for old. Wow. So to me, it feels like we're out of the dark ages and into the age of Aquarius, because Aquarius is also a future-oriented zodiac sign. So kind of entering the sci-fi world. Okay. So can't wait to see what you guys have to say about that.
There's a lot in there, and I'm going to ask you, Jay, to maybe break down part by part. I'll bring them each in order for you. But Laurie says, wow, Julie's intro. Can't wait to see where this show goes. Neither can I. That was actually a powerful intro. Jay, let me bring this back up on the line for you as well. For me, let me ask you about this exposing of false topography. There's the idea, and you've mentioned this before on other shows, that the planet we live on might not be exactly as it's being portrayed. And when I see the quatrain, I also think about perhaps national boundaries, this fallacy of having boundaries between all of these countries that at some point here will have to be redesigned. What's your first take here on this false topography, and how does that relate to perhaps the knowledge that is just before us now?
Well, we know 10 years ago in 2013 that Vladimir Putin released all the maps of Tartaria that had been secretly hidden inside the Kremlin. And that started the whole Tartarian alternative history, people going crazy like me, because, you know, there's this country that existed for 1,000 years or so, and nobody ever learns anything about it in their history books. And and then that gives rise to, is there other things that we don't know about? And I've long advocated that there is an unknown country that is here on Earth, that is populated by the elites, and they use it as their taking off place. So when they want to interact with us, then they use their flying saucers and everything, and they come from this undiscovered country, which is kept off all the maps and all the globes and everything. And I believe that I believe it's probably somewhere in the South Pacific. I don't know, though. I would think that that would be the least traveled area on Earth. So that's where I would probably choose. And I think, you know, the very first people, as I've said before, that get out into the open sea are going to know where everything is. And so they can redirect everything and everything. So I think that's a lot of what has to do with. And I also think that the release of the Tartarian documents and maps created an opening for us to now consider that there's a lot of possibilities that we weren't considering before. And that's opening us up to these technologies that are passive technologies that our forefathers in Tartaria were using, that we can now use, and we're now learning how to use these things. There's a great new emerging gardening system called electroculture, for instance, which is where you wrap copper wire around a wood stick and you stick it down into your garden, and it draws down all the energy into your garden. You don't need fertilizer, you don't need a bug to kill the bugs. And, you know, I'm doing it right now in my garden, and I'm really kind of blown away by it. And this again comes from looking at Tartarian architecture, right? So I think that's where we're going.
Hey, Jay, let me ask you, Jay, also, are you using structured water? Some people are using, in combination with that, also the structured water, and apparently the yields are 30, 40, 60% bigger with that water being used as well. Go ahead.
And, you know, you can buy the structured water magnet. I think I spent, what, $30, something like that. And I just clamped it around the pipe that's coming into my main system, right? And now all my water is structured, my shower water, my plant water, everything. So, and this is cheap. I mean, you know, and so I think that that's what we're seeing is the emerging, and the decentralization of the Aquarian age is what's going to, you know, kick this thing forward, because necessity is the mother of invention. So we're going to be out here and we're going to need these things. And, you know, fertilizer shortages, for instance, are now going to become rampant. But if people buy a $40 magnet that magnetizes their water and creates structured water, and you don't need fertilizer anymore, right? So this is where I think we're all heading. I think that's what he's actually talking about. As for the monuments, that's really interesting, because the monument that I studied for 20 years in Ende, France, was built around the time of Nostradamus, we think. And it talks about, you know, the great cycles and the coming changes that are happening. This is 500 years ago, was talking about this, right? And many people have and there's a bunch of these kinds of monuments all over France, by the way, not just in Ende. but all over France we've been finding them, and a lot of people have speculated that the pedestal of the monument is hollow, and that there could be important documents in there. I don't want anybody to go do anything. Please don't wreck anything. But that has been speculated, and we were going to do an X-ray of the monument to see what was inside it. But I think that from what I'm hearing that there has been discoveries in Egypt that are inside these. They're not urns, but there's these granite boxes, and they're discovering stuff right now as we speak that is supposedly unbelievable. That's going to change everything. And, we have to keep pressure on the people finding it to release that information and not hold it to themselves. And this is not Zawi Hawass or any of the main people in Egypt. This is people like me who go in and are doing their own research. So there is, from what I'm hearing, there is a bunch of really big stuff about to happen.
And do you think, let's backtrack here also, going back to the world map, you said maybe the South Pacific, but do you see the idea of perhaps this ringed planet also? Like we talked about this idea of Atlantis, fabled in a lot of our literature, but this idea of this map here where the planet is even bigger than we are, and we're perhaps in a colony or encircled somehow, and that the rest of the population of this planet doesn't really interact with us other than perhaps, like you say here, either through spaceships or even underground tunnel. Do you have any other data points that suggest here, including the Tartaria maps that Putin just included? Is there anything else in your history field or in your books that suggests that, yeah, there's more here than meet the eye, and perhaps the planet's even bigger or in a different shape than we actually think? I
think that we may live on a hollow planet. I think the Earth may be hollow. I think that there's probably the problem is if the Earth is hollow and there's an inner sun, right, then it's perpetually warm in there, right? And if there's an opening on the top and an opening on the bottom, which does go with higher dimensional physics, it would make sense that there would be a vortex, right? The Earth would be shaped like a vortex, right? Then you would never, okay, so those openings would be perpetually fog covered. Just like when you open your refrigerator, your freezer on a hot day, and you get all that fog coming out. That's because hot air and cold air are meeting, and that turns into fog. And so you would never actually see the openings, I don't think. We would just go over a huge cloud bank. And we do have Admiral Byrd's strange statements that he made flying into Antarctica, where he said he went into a land where it was tropical, and he saw these animals and things, and I think there's something to it. That's all I want to say, because people think, hollow planets and hollow Earth. But first off, it makes sense from a higher dimensional physics point of view. Secondly, we know that the Earth expands. That it was once about a quarter of the size that it is now, and it was covered completely in water. All right. And then it expands. Every once in a while, it expands more until you can see the continents that, they all fit together. Right. And then expands outward. As it expands outward, it creates a cavity inside. Right. And the molten core becomes the smoky god or the inner sun. And the Earth is expanding. And we've gone through many expansions, and we're going through one right now, in fact, and we're going to expect a lot of damage to our infrastructure over the next few years as the Earth begins another expansion movement. So I think that there's a whole other world that exists right here with us that we don't know about, that keeps itself secret from us and influences us heavily, especially our religions. And they come in and they influenced Akhenaten, Muhammad, a lot, Moses probably, and they're doing it because they're moving us towards something, and now we're in the age of Aquarius. It looks like they're about to expose themselves to us.
You
for
talked about
reasons.
these big sarcophagi or these big granite boxes in Egypt. We just saw last month the discovery of a brand new tunnel inside the
Yep.
Great Pyramid of Giza. This is on
Yep.
Graham Hancock's channel. I wanted to also ping your memory and your knowledge on perhaps the cavities below the paws of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Now, we've heard a lot of stories about that too. Can you bring that into the context here of these urns being opened, as Nostradamus is talking about? Do you see also that connection with the Sphinx and or here this new tunnel in the pyramids? And what can you share with the audience?
Yeah, the technology has become so advanced that we can now see the cavities underneath the paws of the Sphinx. And I'm sure that, they've somehow worked their way in. As I think I've told you before, when I was at the Sphinx, I found a tunnel in the back, the rear end of the Sphinx, looked right down into the tunnel. So there's tunnels, or if there may not even be tunnels, they may be hallways and rooms in structures that have been covered over by sand. That's probably more likely what's going on in Egypt. And that's what Fulcanelli tells us at the front piece of Mystery of the Cathedrals, is that the Sphinx is sitting on top of another structure that's underneath it. So that may be what's going on here. But yeah, there's a lot of really exciting stuff being discovered here recently. And weirdly enough, a lot of it's pointing towards some kind of ET thing, is what I'm hearing. So
Yeah.
Okay, that's my next question. Don't go too fast, Jay. Everybody's mind blown already. Okay, so in the Web Data report, starting around, I believe 2007 was the first time Cliff saw this in his reports, and then it was repeated over and over, let's say for the last 14 years or so. There is a data set that at some point here we would have food riots, the degradation of the dollar, the implosion of the religion itself, the Catholic Church itself from within. And that was tied to a data set of the storming of the Vatican. And in there, we would have this big title, which was Secrets Revealed. And so as we go underneath the Vatican, we look at perhaps the history and the books that are from the Library of Alexandria. We look at the perhaps even occupied territories from other races, which brings us to our point. What can you share with the audience at that level as well? And perhaps even having this discussion right now is going to help a lot of people go through that process when and if this actually comes to bear. And we're seeing now more and more of these monuments opening themselves up here energetically to their secrets for the population. So what do you have in terms of the Vatican?
Okay, so the Vatican, about 10 years ago, Pope Francis put out this very odd statement that the transfiguration of Jesus was not solely didn't just happen with Jesus. And everybody freaked out, especially the conservative Catholics. Like, what is he saying? This is the greatest heresy of all time. Well, I got into trying to find out what that was all about. And what has happened is that the Catholic Church has sent priests out over the last 20 years, and they've gone to Tibet and to India, and they found evidence of people attaining light body, solid evidence that people have attained light body many times, including just a couple of years ago. Father Miso went to Tibet, and he was 2 days late to the event, but he did find the nails and the hair that was left behind, and there were 20, 30 people saw the event happen. And so the Pope has come to realize, and the church has come to realize, that probably I forget his name, Asoka, the Hindu, the guy who converted to Buddhism, sent out many people, to evangelicals out into the world. They went to the Middle East. We know that Jesus studied in India. He probably studied all the light body traditions that were very going at the time. He came back and he did demonstrated it. That's what happened. And so when they went to the tomb on the Sunday after the crucifixion, all they found was the shawl with the shroud that was left behind. And so the church is like completely falling apart now. There will be no Catholic Church very soon. They now realize that everything that they've been teaching has been wrong, that what Jesus was trying to demonstrate was nothing of what they were trying to teach us. And they're backtracking, and they know that it's over for them. And I don't know what to say except that, if you really want to read, it's called The Immortality Key. Forget the name, the author's name, but he absolutely proves that the rites of the Mass, of the Catholic Mass, up until about 1,000 years ago, were psychedelic. They were actually handing out psychedelics at the church Mass, and that was what was really going on. And that these particular psychedelics will lead you into understanding how to take your biophotons and increase them to the point where they consume your body and you become light. I know it sounds crazy, but there it is right there. Great book, by the way. If you ever want to interview that guy.
I don't think it's crazy. And Jay, remind me also, in my registry somewhere in my head, I have this documentary or maybe a book that speaks about a temple somewhere in Tibet where you walk in and there's all of these glass urns of all the people who had achieved their light body or rainbow body and who had been cremated, but the cremated remains were all glowing independently with no technology. So there's there's a relation to this book. And if you guys are interested to blow your mind even more, School of the Dead Man, Cliff was just talking about psychedelics yesterday, as if he knew we were going to get into this topic here today. So go check it out. So Jay, remind me about those urns, perhaps with those glowing human remains.
Yeah. So if they have let certain people in, the lamas in Tibet now. They have to keep it cool now because the Chinese are everywhere now. But they have these rooms where the remains of the light bodies, like you leave behind your teeth and your nails, right? They stay behind and they're glowing, right? And also sometimes they'll just leave a little piece of calcium behind, right? That'll be the only thing that's left behind. And then they'll put that into an urn, a see-through urn, and then that will glow. And they actually use it to read and stuff, right? They use these urns to read. And this knowledge has been suppressed for thousands of years. And right now it's escaping in a big time way. And we know, if you ever watch my video, my reality check, Secrets of Light and Dark, there are ways to fool your pineal gland. Your pineal gland is ruled by light, okay, and dark. Okay, serotonin is released when your light hits your eyes. Melatonin is released when no light hits your eyes. That's why you shouldn't watch TV late at night. You're fooling your pineal gland. And you can do these exercises yourself. They're completely free. You do need friends to help you, but you can practice these light body practices without drugs, completely with just light and dark, and learning how to fool your pineal gland into excreting these things. We know that melatonin gives you long life. That's what it does. That's the two things of alchemy: enlightenment and a long life. Melatonin gives you a long life. Serotonin is one atom away from dimethyltryptamine. It's your own endogenous, that means it's within you, your own endogenous DMT. It's you. So when you take your own DMT, it's, the hyperdimensional thing happens, and you're now regurgitating yourself in a way. Mm-hmm. Terence McKenna once said that DMT is like, ayahuasca, which has DMT in it, is like giving birth to yourself through your nose. And that's what it's like. And
that sounds like a horror movie, Jay.
That's where we're headed here. And what's really amazing, because I keep track, like you guys do, of all these different things that are happening, and they all seem to be reaching some kind of culmination right now,
right,
in every different place, whether it's Egypt or alchemy or psychedelics. And everybody's like, wait a minute, we're starting to reach conclusions that we couldn't even conceive of 5 years ago. So
exactly,
it's pretty amazing.
I love what you're saying about also the endogenously produced chemicals. A lot of people are going outside for ayahuasca ceremonies and all that. But when you get into this technology, this light and dark you were talking about, you guys can do that at home. You can set up your own dark room and you can spend some time in there to increase that effect here of this endogenously produced DMT. And when you go, okay, oh man, we could do a whole show on that, Jay, but thank you. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to ask you this last question as you brought up your reality check YouTube, and people, please go subscribe to Jay there. He's got a lot of amazing information. Atop the page on your banner, you're showing an alchemy poster, and I was wondering if in these light bodies and the remains of these light bodies, you know, in alchemy, how you use urine, sperm, blood, crystals, gold, silver to make the philosopher's stone. Have you seen any references anywhere of perhaps also using some of the remains of these light bodies?
No, but it is what alchemy is. What alchemy is the alchemist is seeking to attain his light body, his diamond body, they call it.
Right.
And he's using all sorts of different things that help him achieve, her too, because there's alchemy is usually a man and a woman working together. She's called the Sora Mystica, or the mystical sister, and he's the alchemist, but he needs to have her for the balance of it. And it's weird because over and over, there's one thing that keeps reappearing when this light body stuff is somehow it's related to forgiveness and compassion and love, right? It's like you have to have all these things up front first, like Jesus, like the whole thing of Jesus, right? Yeah. He had to prove that he could forgive his enemies who were killing him, literally, before he could achieve this transfiguration, right? And the same thing with like Pabas and Baba and all the others who have achieved it. They had to go through this like whole inner process of I don't know, learning how to walk in other people's shoes, kind of. And and alchemy is full of that too. How you know, you can't have these negative thoughts, and you've got to, you know, or otherwise you'll screw the experiment up and all of that. But basically, alchemy is about absorbing light, how to turn your biophotons on so that you are emitting as much light as possible.
Fascinating show, Jay. And there's a bunch of people in the chat saying, yes, let's do a whole show on this light technology. So, Jay, maybe we'll ask Julie here to create a special cover for that, and we'll get into some of that research for you guys. And of course, yes, I agree with Lorianne. She says, wow, Julie, as usual, is a majestic mental mountain of knowledge. I appreciate that, Lori. And of course, Julie just brought us into one hell of a rabbit hole with that first slide. But Julie, we have to keep going here. There's more.
And it's crazy because my second slide deals with alchemy. So it's one of the alchemy quatrains of Nostradamus. So can't wait to get there with you guys. I think it's right on the money for today. So yeah, I was looking at the book by Dolores Cannon to get more information about the previous quatrain. And oh, I made a mistake. I just looked at the first line, but okay. So and it's going to let's say lead us into the next subject, which is, I feel, the alien exploration. So let's dive in. So in the book, they say the phrase "he will expose the false topography" means he, and let's remind the audience, if you haven't seen the previous Nostradamus show, that the genius energy, in our opinion, deals with the Aquarian archetype, and not just one person, let's say, as a messiah coming here on earth and changing everything. It's more like an energy that we all have access to. So the genius is kind of this Aquarian archetype. So he will expose a false topography means he, the genius, will show that the way things are looked upon, they will have a false appearance, that the philosophies and science have been built upon mistaken premises, thereby building a mistaken picture of the universe. What he discovers and what he develops will help people come closer to the true appearance of the universe, how it really is in relation to the life force that permeates everything. People will be able to free their inner selves and open themselves up to the higher powers and the higher levels of the universe. So it feels like we're kind of accessing a new portal of energy that will give us access to let's say more people maybe transitioning into their light bodies, more people having this knowledge also on how to do it. And then second paragraph about the same quatrain, he says, but in this case, the false topography is the cover-up. So maybe the other meaning of what Nostradamus really meant by topography. This is the misinformation about the spacecrafts and space stations and all. The misinformation of what the space program told us. They know the truth. I know there is also the false topography of what's happening in the photographing of various planets and stations and vehicles on the moon that were not put there by certain people. So that's kind of mysterious end of the line. So I think it does refer to the Earth, like not knowing exactly, is it hollow? Is the North Pole an opening? Is the Antarctica another opening? But also our knowledge of all that's been built on the moon and other, let's say, planets of our solar system. So if you go in the second slide, JC, or if you guys don't have any comment, we can switch to the second one. Oh, JC, you're muted.
Yeah, my audio is choppy on my end. I can barely see you guys. You're not moving, but everybody in the screen are saying that they're saying you. Okay, so it has to be at my end. Yeah, let me let you go to the second slide right away. It'll give me time. I'll try to get off the screen here and maybe reboot my router, and I'll come back and we'll try to keep the show going. Okay, keep going. Julie, I'll bring up my slide, but you might lose it here if I reconnect. So let me just put it on the screen.
Okay, I'll bring mine. Don't worry.
If not, you have it on yours as backup as well. Okay, so let me bring up the second one. This one here, Julie?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll be back in a sec. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's another, okay. So I'm just gonna bring mine on the screen. Here we go. So there's another book that I own that was given to me by my sister. So this is Nostradamus, the Complete Prophecies. So it's like a whole brick of all the prophecies. Yeah. Honestly, the interpretation in it are so-so. They're not my favorite, but I do like to look at the different translation of the quatrains and sometimes the explanations of them. So this one is by John Hogg. And to him, the quatrain that we just looked at, exposing the false topography and all the documents being revealed, to him, it relates to the French Revolution. So honestly, that was quite surprising to me. But he does make the link also that the quatrain is number 7Q14, and the storming of the Bastille happened on the 14th of July, so on the 7th month of 1789, which is a very important date in astrology as well, because it's the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius. Yeah. So do you understand why they would link it with the French Revolution, this quatrain, Jay? Do you have an idea?
I don't. I know John, and I agree with you. I don't normally care for his interpretations that much of Nostradamus, but I'd have to. Can we look at it again, maybe? Maybe I can see what he's talking about.
Yeah, let me bring this. Oh, here we go. So yeah, they will come to expose the false topography. The urns of monuments will be opened. Thus multiplies the philosophy of the sacred or false sect, black for white and the new for old.
I can see where the multiplies the philosophy of the false sect could be the French Revolution. That does.
Yeah, me too. The last line.
Monuments. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting that he's pointing towards the last time that Pluto is in Aquarius.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's kind of maybe hinting at an end of an era, of a way to think, a way to understand philosophy. And yeah, it's so interesting because we're also, Pluto just moved into Aquarius. So it's kind of pushing this Aquarian archetype even more. And so we're kind of having this rediscovery of hidden documents, which is also Pluto. Pluto reveals stuff that was previously hidden. And Aquarius is all about technology. It's all about things that kept us from attaining freedom. So the knowing of our rights and knowing of the technology I just said. Also, it deals with astrology, interestingly enough, and it deals with AI and our connection to ETs and to the stars. So very interesting. And I just made the parallel here in the second part of the slide that 14 in tarot numerology, because we all know that Nostradamus was very adept of both tarot and astrology. So he did number himself his quatrains, and it's kind of very mysterious what it correlates with, all the numbers. But he did say in the Dolores Cannon book, that was channeled, of course, that it had a meaning, but he didn't say what the meaning was to say. So he said, oh, you have to look further and find it yourselves. But I know 14 in tarot numerology deals with the Temperance card. And to me, that's another Aquarian archetype, because you see he's dealing with vases that can be urns, water, which is kind of the symbol for knowledge, and communication about that knowledge. Thank you, JC. And so communication, balance, and knowledge. And there is also an angel and an urn. So very much Aquarian. And this number of the quatrain 714, if we add the numbers together, it's the world card. So kind of the end of an era and a big change on how we experience the world. So all of what you just said previously about us kind of doing things that look supernatural, attaining light bodies, makes total sense, because kind of the physics of the world are changing, because we're also changing era with Pluto in Aquarius. So
that's right. That's exactly right. 14 is also the number of part pieces that Set cut Osiris up into. So
oh, wow.
and then he spread every piece all over the planet, and Isis had to go around and pick them all back up. And she only got 13. She was missing the phallus. So she had to create a golden phallus, to which she impregnated herself with, and had Horus, who went back and got revenge. And so it's the whole alchemical story of dismemberment, regrouping, resurrection, right? And then rebirth. No. So 14
Wow.
is that. Also,
JC, you're muted.
Oh, okay, I think I'm back. Going back to these monuments from earlier, do you think the phallus is maybe here at St. Peter's Square? Is it maybe in Washington, D.C.?
It's probably, I don't know where it's at, but it's probably been one of those places. Or the three main places are what? London, the Vatican, and D.C. So that's where they keep all the stuff. It's probably in D.C., like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, in that warehouse there somewhere.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Going back to, I missed part of it there as I had to reboot. I wanted to get back into the ET component. Julie, you brought up the fact that, of course, Pluto was entering Aquarius. In this particular episode, Pluto the Destroyer, if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out on our Rumble feed. We talked about, going back to the quatrain here, the removal of the sect or the removal of the cults. We talked about some of the figures in the ET community, and their masks haven't been dropped here as of late, so that we can actually enter into real disclosure and a rapprochement between us and our actual star families. Jay, I know this is a difficult subject, if not an impossible subject for you to speak online. Can you share anything about what's going on right now, even not necessarily about the particular gentleman on the screen, but this idea of having to remove all of those false gurus, those cults around the ET conversation, and where you see things moving forward here, as we are definitely coming closer here to this bigger conversation about extraterrestrials?
Well, everything's moving to cults. Everything now. Politics, art, movies, everything is cults now. And it's very disconcerting, because cults don't really learn to think for themselves. They usually follow a charismatic leader. But at the same time, it seems like the mask is coming off of everybody, and they can't really run and hide. And people have had a very jarring learning experience, where they believed what people were telling them, and then that person then ends up saying that no, everything I just said wasn't true. And so they get all crushed and hurt. And, they free energy was promised in 2015, and 0G vehicles were promised, and it was all going to happen real soon. And then none of it happened. And here we are years later, and none of it happened. And so what it did is it demoralized the community. And so it was a very bad thing. And so, but the community learned. And so now the community is going to demand to see the receipts from now on, I think. And so, you know, it was a bad experience, but it was a good experience. But here's the thing. If we can get the secret of alchemy out into the world so that everybody can practice alchemy, light body practice, then we've won. Then we've undermined the entire structure of the world. The whole structure will be undermined. You don't need food when you're a light body. You don't need to sleep. You don't need, right? And you don't have to. And you can. It can be a slow process. So this is why it's so suppressed, and why the church taught it all wrong, because it has to be suppressed, because it's the one thing that will overturn the power structure. And so they can't let it happen. And I don't care anymore. And I think there's a whole bunch of people that don't care anymore. And so we're just saying it out loud. And I even think the Pope is, you know, I think he's been shut up after he made the statement, but, you know, it'd be interesting to see what he has to say about all this.
And that's why in our last episode, Julie and I, with Penny Kelly, we were talking about creating this new course on the Academy about sex. Not sex per se, but Kundalini, the technologies behind sex, and why all of that was obfuscated from our collective field of view, and why the religions are working very hard in tandem with the distortion of sex, again, so that we don't get into the Kundalini, the Chi, the Prana, the mechanisms into that light body scenario you were just.
You know, it's interesting. I have a book I found it in Europe years ago. And it's a medieval book on sex, a European medieval book on sex, and it's teaching Tantra. Yep.
Oh, wow.
It's teaching Tantra. I was like, what? You know, like, this can't be. And so they knew about it. That's what I'm trying to say, is that all the stuff that we think we are all discovering here in the last 40 years or whatever, it's been around forever. I mean, all of this stuff has been around forever. So we're just rediscovering it.
Right. Wow. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate that. Julie, we're 46 minutes in. I'm getting what I'm hearing from you guys is very choppy. So I know it's probably on my end still. We're having the issue. From your perspective, everything sounds good, Julie?
Yep.
Okay.
All good.
Let's keep going then. I'll bring up the next slide here.
Yes.
Julie, you wanted to bring into context, of course, today, the representation of what we kind of touched on the Pluto the Destroyer episode on Rumble, this idea that we're in those same axis now in the same alignment as we saw in 1789, which of course led to the storming of the Bastille. We just got Mr. T arraigned the other day, and we're having crazy bank runs as we speak. And if you guys have been following Cliff High in the last couple of days also, he's been telling people to buy silver and to buy it now. And this is the video you're looking for, heavy metal. You'll get some more context now. And he was saying that perhaps within the next 2 weeks, even, the silver in the pipeline coming in for delivery is also evaporating. So there's big happenings right now in the silver market. As we know, it passed the $24 mark at closing last Friday, which was a huge line in the sand. And of course, on Mr. T's arraignment day, we passed $25 per ounce. So there's a lot happening there. Julie, set this up for the audience members. The 1789 correlations to what's happening today, and see what Nostradamus had to say about it.
Yeah, so the correlation between the French Revolution and the previous quatrain, to me, I wouldn't have made a link between those, but I found it very interesting because that was the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, and also the last time that the nodes were in the financial axis, 1789. So right now, the nodes are in the same place. So the North node is in Taurus, South node is in Scorpio. So we're letting go of all the power structures that's been enslaving us financially. And that was kind of the same karmic topic that was happening back then in 1789. So just before the storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, there was also a major economic crisis at the time of Louis XVI. So a big financial shift was sort of happening, and that led to a powerful revolution. And of course, it ended up as being the end of monarchy. France became a republic. So you see this very emphasized Aquarian archetype of liberation, equality, and that was also part of the motto for the French Republic: equality, brotherhood. I can't remember exactly what it was, but very much Aquarian, that we're all equal under the law also. And that also came with the same year, the Declaration of the Rights of Man from the Assemblée Nationale in French. So in France, I mean. So basically that gave more legal rights to ordinary people, equality before the law. And it was kind of the foundational document for democracy in Europe. So you kind of see also this Aquarian archetype of wanting to be equal, not wanting to have a middleman between you and your fellow citizen and your resources, you and your knowledge, you and, you get the drift. So, and that also led to the creation of the middle class, which I think is one of the most important things to mention here, because before that, it was very polarized between the rich people, the aristocrats, the royalty, and then you had the bottom of the pyramid, the poor people. So there was no middle class before the revolution. And last time Pluto was in Aquarius, it created a middle class. So I found it, and we touched on it on the Pluto in a Pluto the Destroyer episode. That also, I feel like that was why since 2020. They attacked the middle class more than any other, let's say, level of society, because it was the one that could start a revolution and bring the power down. So, and they knew also that Pluto, once it entered Aquarius, would change the whole power structure. So they would disempower the middle class before it could happen. And the kind of the wind was in our sails. So very interesting. JC, you're still muted.
Julie, just to bring another point there too, I want to have Jay on this. Set up the video you did, or the questions that were set up here from some of our tarot readers with respect to how Quebec was attacked during the pandemic, and also France, and how perhaps they were attacked even more than some other jurisdictions around the world. What's the correlation between that 1789 Pluto and perhaps the role of the Cathars? Set that up in a question for Jay.
Yeah, very interesting link. Merci, JC. So basically, we had our staff retreat recently that was in the north of Quebec. So we gather all of the BeyondMystic Maison Jupiter family together. And so a lot of the French culture came in our field of energy, the French language, of course. And then we were talking to realize that like the measures since 2020 were the worst in France and in the French part of Canada, which is Quebec. So, and then I was like, how is it interesting? And I know, of course, there's been other parts of the world that's been severely hit by those measures, but why would they hit the French people more than everybody else? So that I kind of hinted that to Janine, and she did a whole card pull on her Beyond Ravens on Rumble. And she got that because the people were more financially independent. So a lot of small businesses were owned by French francophones, so French speaking people, but also they were more independent thinkers. Yeah. So they were very consciously targeted by those measures to try to bring them down, because they knew they were the one that could rebel the most for the one world government type of project. And also it came into, like, I received a lot of emails from people after that from Quebec, and they were kind of alluding also to the Cathars tradition that were in France. So I think there is a whole link of DNA, maybe I don't know, bloodlines having to do with Cathar. So I'd like to hear you, Jay, what you think on that topic.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there. The French absolutely refuse to go along with anybody. And they're notorious for it. You try to tell the French that they have to put certain additives in their food, and they'll just start screaming and yelling at you. And there's something about the whole culture that is a threat, and it's always been that way. And that's why England's constantly invading France. And the Cathars, of course, were a very Gnostic group of people who had women as their priests, and they had sacred healing rites, and they refused to become Catholics. And of course, the Catholic Church destroyed them in the Inquisition, to which the Pope was asked, how can we tell the Cathars from the Catholics? And the Pope said, kill them all. God will figure it out. And so they came and they killed everybody in the south of France. So I wrote a whole screenplay about this, and I actually had Leonardo DiCaprio interested in it at one point. This was about 20 years ago. And but I couldn't get financing. But the whole story is amazing. And there's another point that needs to be said about this, and because the Cathars and the French Revolution have something in common, and with also today with what's going on, and that is that the French Revolution did not succeed until the women got involved. They were not involved. And then when the food prices started going up and they couldn't feed their kids, they started getting really pissed off. That's when the revolution started. The same thing with the Cathars. The Cathars were ruled by women. There was a whole class of women that ruled them, and that really irritated the church and England. And today, what really scares the powers that be, I think, is the fact that women are rising up. They're going to school board meetings and they're starting to make their voices heard. And I don't think they know how to handle this. What are you going to do? Go beat up the woman? I mean, what are we going to do about this? And it becomes like a very upsetting point for the people in power to have, all these women complaining and yelling at them and saying, you can't do this, and how dare you teach my kids this, and all of that. And it's having an effect. And I believe that if we have a revolution, I don't think we're going to have a violent revolution, but I think it's going to be led by women. It's going to be a cultural revolution that would be led by women, and the men will follow, because right now we can't say much as men anymore. So it's going to have to be women, because we just get called names and told that, we're just, what is it? Manscaping or whatever they call it. So we really can't do anything. Men have to let women do it now. We just can't do it.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's very Aquarian again, because Aquarius to me is all about balance between your inner divine feminine and inner masculine. So it's not about women overpowering men, which is kind of what the mainstream wants you to believe, that, oh yeah, I'm an empowered woman, meaning I'm trying to be a man. So that's not at all what it's supposed to be. Aquarius, in my mind, is to be a balanced individual.
I just keep losing connection. So I left. You guys were talking about the banking system, and I came back. You're talking about manscaping. So I'm not sure what I did. That's fascinating.
Yeah, we went a long way, JC.
Okay. I heard you say DiCaprio. With respect, I think Jay was saying that he had a script for him. What was interesting in the news today too, he's out there fighting, of course, unveiling some truth bombs there about the Obama campaign and some of the campaign finances and maybe laundering stuff. So I thought that was funny. What's your view on this character, DiCaprio, at this point? Where is he on the spectrum here, fighting this spiritual war? Do you know?
I don't know. I know that he's very interested in the Templars and the Cathars and all of that. And I think his heart's in the right place. I think he's been a little, the problem with being a white guy in Hollywood these days is you have to act really well or you're not going to get any jobs. So it's hard to tell when a white guy's acting woke if it's real or not. Like the guy that played Captain America, he's super woke, right? And he's super white guy, right? And it's like, I don't believe him. I don't believe it. I believe that he probably has to do this kind of thing. So I can't really tell. I know that Leonardo is 53 years old and he's dating a 19-year-old, and I think he's pissed off a lot of feminists and stuff with that one. But hey, whatever, you know. He's got
I thought his cutoff age was 18, so at least he's broadening the spectrum there a little bit. Okay, I think this is what you guys were referring to with the manscaping and all the crazy transgender stuff, all these brands losing their shit here. Of course, Travis Tritt is seconding the video that Kid Rock did the other day, of course, admonishing here Anheuser-Busch and the Bud Light series. Also, Nike now is in trouble for all this. Absolutely crazy. Julie, we have quite a few more slides, man. I keep losing connection. I'm having trouble following with you guys. What do you think? We're
Well, goodbye.
Okay, let's do another one, Jay, if you agree, and then we can get on the alchemistic quatrain that I really wanted to have your input on, because I think it's going to be a great addition to this one. Okay, he's back. Maybe for our ending.
You guys want to call the show, because I can't do this anymore.
Yes, let's do another one to talk about alchemy more.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you for all the comments and supporting us here, even though we're having all of these weird technical issues here with this ice storm that both Julie and I are being affected by here from the bandwidth and also from the internet and power outages as well. Thank you so much for joining us here today, guys. Please, in the meantime, go and support our friend here, Jay Weidner. You can find him at jweidner.com if that works. I don't know, it's like coming up on the screen. Nope. And of course, on his YouTube channel as well as Reality Check. And you can find Julie.
Oh, here we go. So we can find JC at
Julie at Reality Check.
Yeah, hopefully soon. And then thank you so much, Jay. That was amazing. You always bring such amazing content, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and see you very soon. Au revoir.
Bye.